Good evening, Goeienaand, Sanbonani, Dumelang. So good to have each and every one of you this evening as we begin this live broadcast. Unfortunately, our president, due to some pressing matters that he needs to attend to, is unable to join us tonight. But you will have a surprise in that, as the president indicates, there is a co-pilot. And so I will also have a co-pilot with me tonight. And so grateful that you could be with us tonight in what are some difficult times that many South Africans are facing. Difficult times in terms of our economic climate, difficult times socially in terms of what is taking place on the ground with what many communities have to contend with. Communities are contending with drugs, drug addiction with families. Communities are having to contend with gangsterism and so many other social ills. And tonight we are going to be addressing some of those. And so we're going to say to you, stay tuned, stay in so that you can stay informed in terms of what is taking place in South Africa and what the ACDP is doing to address some of these social ills, as well as some of the, later on, we're going to be hearing also about the two-pot system, if we're able to get to that. And so we want you to stay tuned, because remember that South Africa needs the ACDP and the ACDP needs you. So be greeted and be welcome tonight in this live broadcast, Let's Talk broadcast of the ACDP. And now I'm going to hand over to my co-pilot for tonight, the Honorable Steve Swart, to share and to bring his greetings for tonight. Honorable Steve, welcome. So glad to have you together with us tonight. So you and I are the pilots on this particular live broadcast. Good to have you, my friend.
Thank you, DP. And yes, indeed, it's a great honor for me to be co-piloting with you, DP, tonight. These are big shoes to fill, and our thoughts are with our president tonight. We are just also want to, from my perspective, I just want to welcome everyone and thank them for tuning in. We've got a lot of good news to share with you tonight, and I really want to encourage all viewers to share the platforms so that we can have more people watching this very important viewing and very important screening. There's so much good information that we are sharing. This is a message of hope that we bring, hope in our Lord Jesus Christ and the favor that he brings, the solutions that he brings, that the DP, the president, has been sharing. And we'll miss the president tonight, indeed. We will indeed. But there's a lot of things happening at Parliament, and I look forward to sharing, DP, with you as your co-pilot tonight. What a great honor and privilege.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. Steve currently serves as one of the longest serving members at Parliament, certainly one of the longest perhaps serving on the Justice Portfolio Committee, and is just an asset. You see how he also interacts with the different members of Parliament because of the experience that he has, particularly with the smaller parties, and acts as the whip also for the smaller parties. And they appreciate the invaluable service with regards to the experience that he has, that he brings to Parliament. Well, we are now going to see those of you who have sent your greetings and your comments. And so let's see who's going to be first up with the greetings and with the comments. And then Steve and myself will take it in turns. And so we have first up is Nora Mali, who says, greetings, esteemed leaders and the ACDP family. Looking forward to this evening's informative session. Well, thank you, Nora, and greetings to you.
Thank you, Kaz. It's always wonderful to hear from Kaz, and our thoughts and prayers continue to be with her. Thank you for your message. Good evening, President Meshwe, Honorable Deputy President Wayne Thring, and my ACDP family. Greetings from a very cold and wet South Coast. Looking forward to another insightful and informative session with our leadership. I thought it doesn't get cold in the South Coast, DP, but obviously, yeah, we've got a cold and wet South Coast. Wait until you come to Cape Town. You'll really feel what it's like to be really cold and wet.
Intermittent on that side, Steve. It
greeting.
doesn't last long. It doesn't last. The cold doesn't last long. Christopher Kempfer says, good evening, Reverend Meshwe, DP and ACDP family from Ward 12, Nelson Mandela Bay. And we're going to be speaking about Nelson Mandela Bay a little later. So good evening, Christo.
Dale Ann van der Merwe, hello South Africa. Vir jou boodskap. Ons waardeer die groet van jou kant af en sien daarna uit om met jou te deel vanaand.
That was kort en soet, Steve. Palesa Yates, greetings to our leaders in Christian politics. Looking forward to your message tonight. Good evening, Councillor Yates, and always good to have you as well.
Melissa Isaiah, thank you so much for your message. Greetings to our Honorable President, Women of Destiny President, our DP and ACDP family, in the name above all names, our Lord Jesus Christ. I am so blessed to have righteous leadership. Looking forward to tonight, I presume. And yes, Melissa, indeed, we are very grateful to have our leadership here and to share some good news with you tonight.
Tutu Kumalo says, greetings, SA President and Deputy President. And that's a prophetic statement. And we agree in Tutuko. This is Councillor Kumalo, KZN. Welcome and greetings to you.
Melissa Zaya, also greetings, Honorable DP and ACDP family, blessing from KZN PEC. Thank you for that. And yes, let's encourage the structures to come on board as well. It would be wonderful to have greetings from various structures throughout the nation. So thank you for the leaderships for being here. We look forward to sharing with you later this evening.
Well, Councillor Regine Dees says, good evening, MP Steve. Looking forward to what you are going to share. I'm certain that you're looking forward to what your colleague from the Western Cape is going to be sharing, Regine, and bless you.
Yes, and lastly, thank you, Councillor Demi Dudley. Greetings to co-pilot SWAT. Thank you, Demi. It's always wonderful to see you online. Warm regards to you as well.
All right. Well, it seems like that those are our greetings for tonight from each one of you who has taken the time to pen those words or type those words. We appreciate them. We always thank you and appreciate you, and we value your inputs and the comments. So again, it's not too late, but you get a family member, send the link to a friend, and get them on board as we are about to start our session tonight. Now, in Parliament today, it's been quite a busy period. It's a busy period. We've been dealing with the budget votes, but in addition to the budget votes, there are also some other reports that come to the different committees. One of the reports was a report that came to the Police Portfolio Committee. And this report that came to the Police Portfolio Committee was in the form, the report was dealing about the petition. And a petition was written by one of the community members in the Nelson Mandela Bay area. And the petition was expressing concern about the levels of gangsterism that is taking place within the northern areas like Bettelsdorp and Galvandale within the Nelson Mandela Bay area. Perhaps the first thing that I want to say is that you and I need to know, South Africans need to know, that you are able to write a petition of your concern, whether that petition whether it's dealing with the poor state of roads, whether it is a problem of sewage, whether it's a problem of crime, gangsterism in your community. whether your problem is a problem of the community being overrun by illegal activity, or from those who are not are not from South Africa, who are conducting illegal activities in the country. Whatever the issue is, you have a constitutional right to send a petition to Parliament, and Parliament will send it to the necessary committee. And that committee then has to look at your complaint, look at the petition, and then begin to address your concerns. So we had a resident from Nelson Mandela Bay who sent this petition. The petition was sent by the Speaker to the Police Portfolio Committee, and the Portfolio Committee had to address the concerns of the residents of Nelson Mandela Bay, who face an escalating crisis of gang violence. This gang violence emanating from that report, it is related to governance breakdown. So there's obviously been lapses of good governance, and the lapses of good governance comes in many forms. It's not only your government structures like your metropolitan, the metro area, and the councillors who are within the area who are failing to execute their duties responsibly, but also maybe the provincial government that is failing to execute their responsibilities, but also our crime fighting agencies. That is the SAPS, criminal intelligence, the Hawks, and so on. So these are some of the lapses that have been indicated. The United Nations crime research reveals that your state functions are increasingly becoming usurped by criminal syndicates. So state functions within the Nelson, and this report is now speaking specifically to the Nelson Mandela Bay municipal area, that state functions within that municipality are being usurped increasingly by criminal syndicates. And violence is spiraling out of control in the areas of Bettelsdorp and Galvandale. And sadly, the reports also emanating from this report, which was as a result of a petition that was sent from a single member. All right. So look at the power of one person. And sometimes we think, what can I do? I'm just an individual. What can I do? Here was one person who sent a petition. And as a result, these are all of the findings that are coming out in the Police Portfolio Committee. So what they've also found is that the homicide rates in Bettelsdorp and Galvandale, those homicide rates rival the rates some of your Central American countries, El Salvador and so on, where some of the crime in some of these Central American countries are really off the charts. And so the crime in some of these areas in the northern parts of Nelson Mandela Bay have reached these particular proportions. Now, one of the disturbing patterns also emanating from that is what has been known as what the gangsters are calling gemors gangsterism. I've never heard of the term before, but now I have heard gemors gangsterism. And what gemors gangsterism simply is indiscriminate attack on civilians purely to instill fear. And so the gangsters in this community will attack somebody who is coming home from work, a young boy that's coming home from school, a young girl on her way to a supermarket perhaps. There's an indiscriminate attack on residents. And this kind of gangsterism, they now call it gemors gangsterism. It is something that we cannot, should not, must not tolerate within our communities. Now, sadly, also, what we're finding is the allegations. Allegations also arising within the petition. Allegations that gang bosses are colluding with politicians, with councillors, and this senior officials, and this collusion of these gang bosses with these politicians and councillors and so on enables impunity. So they begin to act with impunity because the authorities that is supposed to be protecting the civilians are now in the pockets of these gang bosses. And the allegation also from that petition is that some of these gang bosses also have access to state contracts. So these are criminal syndicates who are being granted access to state contracts. Now, we've heard of tenderpreneurship, where people who should not be getting tenders under the previous dispensation, in particular with the ANC, it was, I think, the Minister of Science and Innovation, Blade Nzimande, who coined the phrase tenderpreneurship, where tenders were being given out to people who did not qualify, who do not qualify for them. Well, now you actually have crime bosses. The allegation, and these are allegations that must be tested. Now you have crime bosses, they say, with access to state contracts. What is concerning is that children as young as 9 years old are now being recruited as drug runners and drug pushers, and firearms, presumably also firearms from SAPS. And we've seen reports that many of the firearms that some of the gangsters in particular are yielding and using to commit crime have actually come from SAPS. One of the colonels in SAPS was actually arrested with hundreds of guns that were confiscated, hundreds of guns that were legally handed in by civilians who have been asked, if you want to hand your firearm in, there's these amnesties, no questions asked, come and hand it in. These guns were found to be back in the hands of criminals. Now, we've got all of these allegations again that need to be tested, but it's from the report. Children as young as 9 are being used as drug runners and smugglers in these communities. And so the failure of SAPS results in many people's lives being lost. It also then means that young people are being recruited, and the community is becoming fragmented. So some of the recommendations, and I maybe want to I'm going to stop with the recommendations which the ACDP supports, and then I'm going to ask for our councillor and provincial leader of the Eastern Cape, Councillor Lance Grootboom, just to ready himself to come in after I've just looked at the recommendations. So the recommendations of the Police Portfolio Committee, it calls for a doubling of the anti-gang unit personnel. So whatever that number is, and I'm not sure of the number, but they call for the doubling of the anti-gang personnel. Hopefully, the doubling of the anti-gang personnel would be able to bring to an end the senseless killings that take place, innocent bypasses. Some as young as 3 years old have been shot caught in the crossfire. And so the committee has called for a doubling of the anti-gang unit personnel, the expansion of the shot spotter surveillance and drone capacity, and then deeper interdepartmental collaboration. And these are all well and good, these interventions, but unless you can add more boots to the ground, you can add more blue uniforms into the community, but if the corruption between the police and these gang bosses is not dealt with, if the corruption at the head is not dealt with, then unfortunately, we are not going to be seeing much change. So what the ACDP is saying is that the safety, now obviously, this is a microcosm. What is taking place in the northern suburbs of Nelson Mandela Bay is a microcosm of what is taking place across the country. And we contend as the ACDP that safety is not a privilege. Safety is a constitutional promise. And this safety that the Constitution of South Africa promises all of its citizens must be restored with strength and immediacy. And so that's the position that the ACDP and the inputs that the ACDP gave today in Parliament, addressing this scourge of gangsterism that is plaguing our communities. And so to get a on the ground perspective, we are now going to ask for our councillor from the Nelson Mandela Bay area himself, who's been a councillor there for many years, with lots of experience in the area, to come and give his perspective of the effect of gangsterism in that particular area. So, Councillor Lance Grootboom, welcome, sir.
Good evening, DP and our MP Steve Swart. Thanks for having me this evening. And yes, this topic we are talking about tonight is really on the hearts of the residents of Nelson Mandela Bay, because it's really a concern. And crime is out of control in our city, especially gang violence and extortion. It's totally out of control. Our residents are not safe. And not even just about 2-3 weeks ago, here in Kariga, here in Uitenhage, 2 ladies were shot dead, and it was all related to gang violence. And like I said, it is ongoing. It is a huge problem in the city. So we need intervention from the South African Police Services, from National Parliament. And just to give a picture of what is going on here on the ground, an idea that just between 2019 and 2025, just that period, over 1,000 gang-related killings happened here in Nelson Mandela Bay. 1,000. And just during 2023, 2024, we had about 244 killings and 144 shootings. And that is only in the northern areas now. The northern areas in Nelson Mandela Bay is an area where mostly colored people are staying. So it's really a huge concern. And the picture is very bleak, because just in May this year, May of 2025, we had about 56 shootings just in the northern areas, resulting into 13 deaths. And that's just recently. So our residents are not safe. And the problem is there are a lot of fatalities. And these fatalities can sometimes be our children. And in this case, about 17 children has died just in recent gang violence in the city. And there were about 62 fallouts. That's mean people being hurt through shootings that happens between gangs here in Nelson Mandela Bay. So there is a huge problem. And the thing is, this national government has tried to intervene. And I think they have been trying to see if they can address it. And they've been called a lot of operations. And that's the problem, is that they call it, I think the recent one was called Bamba, Operation Bamba, which meant to grab. And they send down about 150 public officers, police officers, and I think about 15 detectives just to help with that operation. But still, they could not address the issue that is on the ground. And I mean, there's been another operation which is now launched again now on the 29th of June. I think it's called Chaneli or something like that. And the previous operation did not work. So we don't know if this operation, visible policing, if that is going to assist and so forth. Because, like I said, it is a bad situation in the city. People are afraid to go out at night, or just there can be a drive-by shooting, and all this is gang related. And like I said, more must be done to address the issues, DP.
Lance Grootboom, one of the things that you spoke about was the issue of extortionism taking place within the Nelson Mandela Bay area or the northern suburbs, where gangsterism is prevalent. We had a situation on extortionism where a elderly lady selling magwinyas on the side of the street didn't have I think it was the 300 Rand or 500 Rand extortion money that she needed to pay when the extortionists came to her. And so what they did was they shot her in cold blood because she did not have the 300 or 500 Rand. Now, Parliament, this was raised also in Parliament, condemned as it ought to be. But are you seeing similar within the Nelson Mandela Bay area in terms of extortion? Is it not only businesses, small businesses, but also just the ordinary people that are being extorted? And do you have any information on that?
Yeah, DP, definitely it is business and its residents in our city that has been extorted. And we see this as well in projects with the municipality, where so-called SMMEs also apply violence to principal contractors that has been receiving the tender to do the job, and they rob them of their equipment, especially those who are cutting grass, etc., that have certain equipment. But we've seen also this happening, like I said, with our residents, people that has been, to violent robberies, people's belongings being taken away from them, and even it's not just gang violence, but it's also sexual offenses that has also been rife. But I think in terms of murder, gang violence it's high, and like I said earlier, we have been ranked as the most dangerous city in South Africa, and one of the top 10 most dangerous cities in the world. So, yeah. But to answer your question on extortion, that is happening with a lot of people. Businesses, even small spaza shop owners has been extorted. The same happening with people on the ground. And this is ongoing.
All right. Well, Councillor Grootboom, thank you so much, PL. We have a message or question from Palesa Yates. It says, does Nelson Mandela Bay gangsters have anything to do with the seaport and the drugs coming in? Do you have any information on that?
Definitely not in terms of that. I don't have any information on that.
Okay. But thank you so much. It's been useful, but at the same time, I think sad that our communities are denigrating and becoming these playgrounds for gangsters. The ACDP has one of the toughest crime policies, I believe, of political parties, and one of the policies that we have is in terms of murder in particular. Murder is one of the crimes where no bail for those who are accused, who are been caught by the police and accused of murder. No bail for those accused of murder. So when one looks at some of our policies, those who do the crime must be prepared to do time. And certainly, when you have a government that cares for its people, when you have a government that understands what biblical governance is about, godly governance is about, which is what the ACDP espouses and what the ACDP has been fighting for and striving for all of these years. I believe that under an ACDP government, we would see crime disappearing, like it's been happening in one of the North American countries where the president, and I just forget the name of the country now, but the president who has become, who's taken over as president, immediately addressed the issue of crime, and where they were the number one country in terms of crime and murder, the number one capital country for murder and crime. They are now one of the safest countries on the continent and on the planet. So it is possible. Councillor Grootboom, thank you so much again for your inputs. Well, now we're going to turn to our Honourable Member of Parliament, and Steve Swart, and he's going to address us and speak to us about another issue, and that is the issue pertaining to the allegations that have been made by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi. It has been in the news. It's been covered extensively. The president has called for a commission. Parliament has also been looking at an ad hoc committee. And so there are parallel systems that are in place. And so to take us through these parallel systems, to look at the allegations that have been raised by General Mkhwanazi, the Commissioner of Police in KZN, we're going to have our Honourable Member Steve Swart to take us through that process. And he's been sitting in those meetings over the last few days. Honourable Swart, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, DP. And yes, this definitely ties in with the first issue which we raised, and that is rampant crime in Nelson Mandela Bay. And what we are dealing with is allegations of corruption at the highest level of SAPS. And that is what General Mkhwanazi, who is the Provincial Commissioner of Police, a Lieutenant General in KZN, brought out with his startling revelations a while ago. That has immediately caused an outrage from the public, from every society that is struggling with crime and violence, and they're absolutely appalled at his allegations that even the police minister and high-ranking police officials, unnamed prosecutors, unnamed members of the judiciary are involved in criminal syndicates. And yes, so these allegations have yet to be tested. And this is what the process is. As we know, the Speaker of Parliament referred the allegations to 3 committees, the one which I serve on, which is Justice, the second one, which our President, Reverend Meshwe, serves on, that is Police, and the third one is the Intelligence Portfolio Committee. At the same time, the President of the country instituted a judicial inquiry, a commission of inquiry to be chaired by a judge. And of course, what is also important is a complaint was laid with the public protector. So tonight I want to just focus on what we've been doing as Parliament. But I want to emphasize that the danger with all these parallel inquiries and investigations is that the police do not continue doing the investigations. And that is what we emphasized during our parliamentary sit-ins last week, Wednesday, and again this morning. Whilst we are looking into these issues, the police must continue doing their work. And we cannot, from Parliament's perspective, interfere with their complaints investigation, with investigation of these criminal charges, with preparing case dockets that are ready for trial. That must continue. Sadly, when I did the ESCOM inquiry, we found a lot of the criminal investigations were pended or held back pending the outcome of these inquiries. So what is the difference between us as Parliament holding an oversight inquiry and a judicial independent inquiry? Well, it's very important, and this is what I emphasized last week and again today. Parliament has an oversight function in terms of the Constitution. We can call people to Parliament, as we intend doing, in an ad hoc committee, which is now set up, a specific specialized committee, where we can call Lieutenant General Makhonazi to share the allegations. And then arising from that, we can ask for further information, and we can call other people exercising an oversight function. Those persons cannot refuse to come to Parliament. Once we've looked into those allegations, we can make findings. Those findings are enforceable by Parliament because we have an oversight function. That is the big difference between us and a judicial inquiry. A judicial inquiry goes into looking into all the issues and can take a very long time. It then brings out findings and recommendations which are not binding. This is very, very important. And that is what makes the difference between our inquiry and a judicial inquiry. Now, the President, Ramaphosa, has indicated that the judicial inquiry must bring in interim findings within 3 and 6 months. We believe as the ACDP that this is too short a period, too long a period, given the outrage that the public are expressing. So the benefit of a portfolio committee and ad hoc committee looking into it is we can very quickly call General Makhonazi, find out what is happening, and hold an oversight function. And I think that is very important. I want to just share briefly some of the commissions of inquiry that have taken place. And during parliamentary sittings, there was a degree of skepticism about judicial commissions of inquiry. And whilst I said many have done good work, take, for example, the Zondo Commission, which exposed a lot of state capture and corruption, cost a lot of money, in excess of R1 billion, and yes, did improve accountability, brought out a number of recommendations which are being implemented, but at the end of the day, we are still waiting to see people behind bars that were fingered, that had allegations of state capture and corruption against them. So this is one of the concerns that the public are expressing. As we heard, what's happening in Nelson Mandela Bay, that is symptomatic of many, many societies, communities that are ravaged by crime, that want to know what's happening at the highest level, that want to know what's happening with crime intelligence that is supposed to infiltrate crime syndicates. But what now appears to be happening is that certain police officials are in fact working closely together with criminal syndicates. And yes, we want to acknowledge and commend all those many policemen that are doing exceptional good work, and that there are a number of rotten apples, but we've got to get to the bottom. One of the accolades of General Makhonazi is the fact that he is a person that is known. He's a member of the task team of the police, so he takes no nonsense, and he has, from what one gathers, a very high standing with members of the community, and that is why many people are saying that he needs to be protected, that he needs to be supported, and as we as Parliament will ensure to come and share the allegations, and we need to get to the bottom of this. It is outrageous that even the minister is implicated, and whilst he and other officials have denied the allegations, we need to get to the bottom of this. Society and our communities are crying out. As I've said in Parliament, they are crying out for justice, they are crying out for solutions, and the ACDP has those solutions. As our DP indicated, our anti-crime strategy is a very successful strategy, some of which has already been implemented, but there are many other elements that we would like to see implemented. What is important, of course, is for us as believers to start taking back the ground. through prayer and action. And I think this is very, very important. President Reverend Meshwe has a wonderful testimony of how they prayed in his area, where they were able to push back through prayer the violence that was taking place. But aligned to that is as well strict action from the authorities, because myself as a lawyer, we are taught that the best deterrent to crime is the fact that a perpetrator knows that they will be caught, that they will be prosecuted, and will be sentenced to a lengthy time in prison. Sadly, at the moment, there isn't a sufficient deterrent, and that is why there is so much crime in society. So, DP, that today, when one considers the commissions of inquiry, one of the shocking commissions that spent a lot of time was that the Sariti Commission into the arms deal, which basically was a whitewash of the fraud and corruption that took place in the legendary arms deal. Thankfully, that commission's findings was set aside by a court on review. So we, from the ACDP's perspective, we believe and we will be participating in this parliamentary inquiry. We will be asking questions. We will be getting to the bottom, and we will be praying that justice will prevail. It's also very important that people like Lieutenant General Mkhonazi are protected, because he has really put the cat amongst the pigeons. He's exposed a lot of wrongdoing, and we've also made it very clear in the report that will be tabled tomorrow in Parliament, recommending an ad hoc committee that whistleblowers need to be protected. So DP, that's just very briefly from my perspective, the beginning of the parliamentary process of looking into the allegations made by General Mkhonazi, and we're trusting that we'll be able to get to the bottom of this much quicker and exercise efficient oversight to ensure that our findings are implemented by law enforcement officials, by the SAPs, by the prosecutors, and even to a certain degree by the judiciary itself. So I look forward to involving ourselves in that, and you can rest assured that the ACDP will play a very important role in this process.
Thank you so much, Honorable Steve. And you know, one of the challenges that we have, and you were speaking about the deterrent to crime in your schooling as a lawyer, is ensuring that the perpetrator is prosecuted, jailed, and sentenced, and that he knows that that is what will happen when he gets caught. Not if he gets caught, but when he gets caught. So, you know, he needs to know that soon, at some stage, the law will catch up with him or her. The challenge that we have currently in South Africa is when looking at the conviction rates, particularly when it comes to murder and rape, the conviction rates are very low. The last I saw, the conviction rate for both murder and rape was at around 10%. And so 90%, that's 9 out of every 10, or 90 out of every 100 criminals, murderers, rapists in particular, 9 or 90 out of every 100 get away with their crime. And there's no conviction for individuals like that. Now, that speaks to a breakdown within our criminal justice system, which is you know, from, and perhaps you can just take us through this, and how the different crime fighting units, criminal justice system, how the criminal justice system works, and how important it is, even in the area of intelligence. And the president raised this, and I think he raised it in one of their portfolio committee members meetings, where he said that it was sad that in the looting that took place in KZN and Gauteng in 2021, that the police were only seen some 3 days after much of the damage and destruction and loss of life had taken place. So there's this lack of conviction, or low conviction rate, and the poor interconnectedness, if I can put it that way, of the criminal justice system. So can you perhaps just speak to that, and perhaps some of the interventions that I know that you've also been calling for, particularly with regards to the ESCOM inquiry and how monies can be used effectively to fight crime and other things. But can you speak to us just around that?
Yes, thank you very much, DP. I think the point that you make is very important, that it's like a set of dominoes. Each domino piece, if one piece falls, they all fall. So one starts with the crime scene, with your forensics in a murder, where your forensics investigators must be there, the crime scene must be protected, the evidence must be collected, and then from there it goes to the investigator, the detective. Now we know our detectives are so overworked, they're overburdened, they've got too many dockets, and they've got a shortage of equipment, computers, vehicles. They then have to prepare the case to be trial ready. I used to be a prosecutor. The detectives then send the police docket to the prosecutors. The prosecutor checks the docket, would send it back to the detectives if there is a gap in the case, and only then would the prosecutor then present the case in court. At any of those stages, there might be a deficiency in witnesses, in evidence. Witnesses are often intimidated. They're often shot. That is why we need to have whistleblower protection improved, and that is something we've called for. Then once the case is being presented, you then have defense attorneys that will represent the defense. One of the issues that we have raised that is the fact that the criminal docket is then given, or most of the evidence is given to the defense, and very little of the defense's case is given to the prosecutors. And then you have your case which is presented, you have endless postponements, where a witness might not be available, an interpreter might not be available, the prosecutor might not be available, the presiding officer might not be available, and this goes on and on for postponements ad nauseum. And this can also result in criminal injustice not being done, and that low rate of convictions that you see. Many cases are withdrawn by the prosecutors before they even get to court because of a lack of evidence or because of intimidation of witnesses. Witnesses refuse to give in evidence, and or during the trial when other evidence comes to the fore and you find out that your witness is actually not telling the truth. Bearing in mind that the onus in a criminal trial is much higher than in a civil case. And then, of course, you've got appeals upon appeals, and this can impact the finality of your cases. Now, what has happened with the General Makonazi issue is that he is revealing high levels of, let's say, of infiltration by criminal syndicates into the police services. And that's impacting detective services, impacting prosecutors at a very high level. Questioning why was the task team closed down when they were doing such good work? Why were a number of dockets that were case ready almost withdrawn? And that is from a lieutenant. So besides the normal run-of-the-mill issues that I've raised, you've now got a much higher level of concerns and allegations that are shocking, that need to be fully investigated. But again, getting back to our criminal justice system, you correctly point out that there are so many different elements that work together. And I want at the same time to commend those police officials and prosecutors and judges that do an excellent job of work. And I mentioned this in Parliament last week. The prosecution in the young girl, Jocelyn Smith, that disappeared up from the West Coast, that prosecution was done exceptionally well. Bearing in mind, this was the first time that a kidnapping case had a guilty conviction where the kidnapping victim, young Jocelyn Smith, was not yet found. That was a remarkable prosecution. And I also commended Judge Saldana, it was in Saldana, for Judge Erasmus, Nathan Erasmus, for holding the criminal trial in a community center in Saldana, where the public could hear and see justice being done. So there are a lot of success stories, but I think at the end of the day, I join you and I join so many South Africans that are struggling under the scourge of crime. And we've got many members of the ACDP. I think of Kaz, who suffered the loss of the son, who was going to be a Hawks member. And so we are fully aware of the scourge of crime. The criminal justice system is struggling, but there are, on a day-to-day basis, as I've said often in Parliament, many thousands of officials, police officials, prosecutors that are doing their very best to provide justice. But far more can and should be done. And we need to be praying, we need to be supporting our police, supporting our prosecutors, but holding them accountable as well, very firmly when they do not measure up, and exercising our oversight function from the parliamentary perspective. And I want to commend our president in that regard. He has served for many, many years on the Police Portfolio Committee, revealing and exposing a lot of issues there. And as you correctly pointed out, I'm the longest serving member on the Justice Portfolio Committee, and I've had the honor of trying to see the furnishing of justice being done in a far better measure in South Africa and for the good of all citizens. But at the end of the day, one is disconcerted when you hear your ravaged communities where they are crying out for justice. And I said in Parliament last week, I said the cries and the prayers of South Africans have reached the ears of God Almighty, and He is shaking everything in our nation, particularly with General Mkonazi's revelations. He's shaking everything. He's exposing the rot and the corruption. But thankfully, He gives us as ACDP members and as believers a kingdom that will not be shaken. But Almighty God is a consuming fire. And let us pray that enemies and criminals will be brought to justice, and those that would seek to harm vulnerable women and children will be consumed by God's fire and anger. And I mean that in a very literal way when you see how we are struggling in our communities, that something far more and far better needs to be done. And the ACDP does provide those solutions.
Well, Steve, as you've been speaking, I'm reminded also of the scripture which informs us that the foundations of God's throne are justice and righteousness. There are those who subscribe to the view of love and mercy and forgiveness and stay on that end of the spectrum, and would even argue that when justice is required, that God is a God of love, so who are you to judge? God is a God of mercy, so why do you wish to bring justice upon someone who has perhaps fallen foul of the law? And I think we need to understand that as a political party seeking to govern South Africa and seeking to govern South Africa under the lordship of Jesus Christ and using the principles of the Word of God and using the principles of the Bible as within a biblical democracy setting, that there are the other spectrums to God besides mercy and justice. And he is a merciful God, and he is a loving God, and he is a compassionate God. But he is also a God of justice, and he's also a God who requires righteousness. And so we cannot forget as Christians and as believers that when God gives us the opportunity to rule one day, that it is within that particular environment where we are going to be the ones who, on his behalf, are going to have to execute righteousness and justice on his behalf, wherever we are found. And so, Steve, this is something that you have been doing, something that you've been practicing as a prosecutor, but also within the Justice Portfolio Committee, where you've been sitting, assisting in crafting and crafting laws. And perhaps as we wrap up, I think maybe it's important, just on this one item, it's important also for members to know the influence that the ACDP has had in influencing the criminal justice system in South Africa with an ACDP policy. And that ACDP policy is the policy of restorative justice. And so, Steve, perhaps in the next minute, can you just speak to that particular aspect of restorative justice and how the ACDP has influenced the South African system in that sense?
Yes, thank you, DP. Just also to remind us, Romans 13 says the state bears the sword of justice. So there's a very important element to that. But at the same time, where you have a person, an offender who is not a danger to society, who commits a property crime, such as a child that steals a loaf of bread because they are hungry, what is the good of sending that child to prison where they are raped and abused into a lifetime of crime? And so in those cases, we believe in restorative justice. We believe in restitution to the victim of that crime, and we believe in teaching the child, and we've implemented that through the Child Justice Act, to go through programs where they become rehabilitated and they become strong and healthy citizens. And that is a very strong element where particularly that child is not a danger to society. And we believe in that rehabilitation. So that policy, as I say, we pioneered it. It is included. It's not soft on crime, but it does restore the community restoration, the tranquility of the community, and is based on biblical precepts. So yes, but at the same time, we want to emphasize that when it comes to those criminals that are a danger to society, we believe in the sword of justice. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, this is where we are going to have to bring it to an end. So the focus tonight has been a focus on crime, something that very many of us have been affected by. Hardly a South African has not been affected by crime in some way or the other, whether it's just petty theft, the cell phone that has been stolen, your car smash and grab, vehicle hijacked, housebreaking. And so there's hardly a South African that has not been affected in some way by crime. So let's continue to pray for our country, continue to pray for those brave men and women also in blue, righteous ones, the hardworking ones. Let's continue to keep them in prayer. The ones who are really fighting crime, we need to keep on bearing them up in prayer so that we as ordinary citizens can live in our communities safely. And so we want to just again thank you for tuning in tonight. I pray that you've learned something. And again, remember that South Africa needs the ACDP and the ACDP needs you. On behalf of the president of the ACDP, good night and till next week.